Airport traffic to Papa Lima Alpha Yankee is based on that, runway 23, airport traffic.
So, John, tell me, what is the Jag Aviation Share Scheme all about?
It's really very simple, Shane. It's the TBM 700. It's a very expensive aircraft for one person to buy and maintain normally. So what we've done is we've split it so we have 20 people that each own a share of it.
Sounds interesting, John. So isn't that a massive expense and commitment?
Well, usually it is, but because of the way we work the formula out with this, you really only pay for when you use it. So you're guaranteed to get your share money back at the end.
So, John, how much is it going to cost and what's my commitment?
That's very straightforward. The cost is $36,000 for your share, and your commitment's for a minimum of 3 years and a maximum of 5 years.
Okay, so that's not so bad then, John. I pay my $36,000 up front and I get my $36,000 back at the end of the term.
Yes, that's right. And from then on, you just pay for what you use.
So, John, tell me about this beautiful aircraft.
Well, this is a TBM 700, and it's what we call a turboprop. So it's a jet engine that drives a propeller. You've probably seen this sort of engine on the Flybe aircraft, the Dashes that used to fly out of Newquay. And this one, the TBM, is the fastest civilian single-engined aircraft in the world. This particular model, it's got an airspeed of 345 miles an hour, and it flies up to 31,000 feet. So very fast, very high.
So, John, how far can you go?
Well, it actually has a range of 1,000 miles, but really it's a maximum of 3.5 hours of flying time, depending on the wind. So if you think of Gibraltar, Mallorca, those type of places, that's the kind of range.
So anywhere in the UK then, basically?
Yes, absolutely. We can get to the very tip of Scotland, no problem at all.
So you said at the beginning then that these aircraft are quite expensive to maintain. So am I going to get like a big bill halfway through my term?
No, not with the way we've structured it. Firstly, we have the fixed cost, and what we've done is we've split those up across the number of bookings we expect to make over the year, and currently that works at £250 per booking.
So when I book a flight with you, it's £250 first off as a booking fee?
Yeah, you got it. From then on, you pay actually by the mile that you fly, and depending on which way air traffic control take us, if they give us a direct route, you pay less. If they give us a route around the houses or we have to hold, you'll be paying a bit more. So you really are the owner, and you do pay exactly what it costs.
That makes sense. So how much does it cost, John?
It's very straightforward. You pay for your trip by the miles that you fly at £6 per mile, and that includes everything. It includes fuel, crew, airways charges, and it even includes the fees at your base. You then pay the airport fees at the destination. So if you're going somewhere like Perranporth, here we are today, this would be £45. If you want to go to Gatwick, it might be £3,000. It's your flight. You're really deciding where you want to go.
So that's £6 a mile to get me here. I'm assuming it's another £6 a mile to get me back.
Not exactly. If you're just here and we're dropping you off, then yes. But if you were coming for the day, we'd stay here and wait for you, and then it would be £3 a mile to get you back again.
Excellent. So if I was to stay overnight somewhere, would you stay around or would you make the trip twice?
What we do with that is we look at the cost either way and work out which is the least expensive for you. If we do stay overnight, it's £600 for the night. So we'll look at every flight. I'd rather not stay overnight if I can help it, but if that's the cheapest way, that's what we do.
So what do I pay for exactly, John?
Well, with our aircraft, most things are changed by the hours flown, not when they're worn out. So every hour that we fly is going to give us an ongoing cost, and we have an upgrade pot that we put money into to cover for those items. The big items are the engine, the propeller, and even the avionics, and over the next 5 years we're going to be changing most of those. The complete cost of these upgrades is estimated to be $750,000, so that's no small lump of change. Again, of course, this is all related to the amount of hours that we fly, so we've set our cost to reflect the amount of hours that you fly. And we give our shareholders two options, dependent on the amount of hours they're likely to use the aircraft over the 5 years. The first option is to pay a £20,000 upfront fee, and then £1 per mile that's flown. And the second option is nothing up front, but £2 per mile flown. And of course this is for total miles flown. So if we flew somewhere that was 100 miles there, it would also be 100 miles back. So with option 1 that would be a total of £200, with option 2 that would be a total of £400.
Okay, so this clearly isn't cheap. So what is the advantage of private aviation?
Well, today is a good example of that. Here we are in Perranporth in the middle of Cornwall. There are no local airports, there are no scheduled flights into Perranporth. The closest thing we have is Newquay, but there are no scheduled flights from Guernsey to Newquay. So today, it took 45 minutes to fly here. I got into the plane about 15 minutes before and the whole trip took about an hour. Without this aircraft, my options would be very different. Right now, there are no direct flights to anywhere close to Perranporth, and since Flybe went, you can't even get to Newquay. So right now, I could have flown to Southampton with a Rini, and from there, I could have picked up a hire car and driven the 5 hours down to Perranporth. And of course, I'd have had to have done exactly the same on the way back, which would have meant no chance of doing that in a day. It would definitely be an overnight stay. Or I could have flown to Southampton, got a taxi to Gatwick and flown to Newquay. Either way, I wouldn't have got it done in a day, so again, that's an overnight stay. That really is the difference with private aviation. It makes things possible that just wouldn't be available with scheduled flights. Right now, of course, there's a bigger picture, the safety issue. I got here, I went to a private hangar in Guernsey, came here and saw nobody at all. Possibly we could have seen a customs officer, but maybe one, maybe two people at most. Now, if you take a look at the scheduled option, going through all those airport terminals, transferring between places, you just rub shoulders with so many more people. Maybe hundreds, maybe thousands. The risks of catching the virus are just so much higher. It just doesn't bear thinking about.
So, if I own a share, who can I take with me and how does that work?
There are a couple of ways, I suppose. If you buy it as a private owner, then you can take your family and your friends on any of your flights. The other way is to buy it as a company, and then the directors, the staff, the shareholders, their family and friends can all be included on your flights.
So how do you cope with the weather, John? The Channel Islands are famous for the fog rolling in.
Well, firstly, with bad weather, it's usually a problem of landing, not taking off. So as we're based in Guernsey, leaving's never usually a problem to us. Once underway, the aircraft's fully instrument equipped and the crew are fully instrument trained. So we have no problem taking off in 500 metres of visibility from Guernsey, straight into the cloud, making the entire trip in cloud, popping out the other end at 200 feet above the runway and landing. Usually we'll keep climbing all the way up to 31,000 feet if we need to get on top of the weather.
So is that safe?
Yes, of course, it's no problem at all. And your captain is always keeping one eye on the safety angle of things. We have a standard set of operating procedures, very much like a corporate jet. We have the equipment and the training to operate within those procedures. And it's quite simple. If the conditions fall within those parameters, we're quite safe to make the flight. If it's within the procedures, then we can do it. If it's not, then we can't. It's not a discussion. The captain will decide. It could be the forecast isn't great, and the captain says, we can give it a go, but we might have to hold, we might have to divert. If for any reason it wasn't safe, it would just be a case of, I'm sorry, we can't make the flight at this time.
So what else do I need to know?
Well, for me, the biggest thing about getting into any private aircraft is the person flying. How well do you know the pilot? How well has he been trained? As you know, we operate these flights as a private flight, but you really don't want to be getting in with any private pilot. These aircraft go very high and very fast. So me, I'm the chief pilot with JagAir. I'm an airline transport pilot. I've got 7,500 hours, and on this aircraft I've got about 3,500 hours on type. I'm probably one of the most experienced people on the TBM in Europe. I'm also a certified flight instructor and type rated on a number of light jets. I also fly them a lot. I usually do about 500 hours a year, so I'm very current.
So this all sounds very good, John. Why hasn't it been done before?
Yes, well it has. This is our second share issue. We did it 3 years ago and it went so well that we decided to carry on again with this aircraft.
Are there any problems to be aware of, John?
No, not really. It really did work very well. We've had a 99.9% reliability with this aircraft. So that's why we've decided to stay with this aircraft and just upgrade the systems.
So here's one for you, John. What happens if more than one person wants the aircraft on the same day?
Well, that happens all the time. It's usually a case of all or nothing. I'll have 3 days with no flights, then everybody wants it on a Friday. It's a first come, first served basis, so the first person to book is going. But really, most people are quite flexible and they'll let us move it around if we need to. Most of our flights are pretty short, so we usually have the option of saying, you can't go at 9 o'clock, but perhaps we could go at 10 o'clock. But if you want to go an hour early, then we can still get back in time to do our original flight. Also, I talk with our owners and we have a relationship. So if we need to go an hour early, I don't have a problem asking them. But of course, be sure to book early. There's no limit on the number of advance bookings you can make.
So John, this really sounds like a whole different world to me. I could literally get my family in the plane. I could go to somewhere like Disneyland Paris or go to the Alps skiing, leave on a Friday and come back on a Monday.
Absolutely, that's what people do. We can go to Cork for the half marathon, we go to Disneyland Paris on a Friday, come back on a Monday, Scotland for some salmon fishing, or off to the Alps for some skiing over the weekend. I did a 2-day trip to Goodwood last year for the Festival of Speed, and then of course the British Grand Prix. When you live on a small island like Guernsey, sometimes it can really feel as if you're stuck on the rock. With private aviation, the world becomes a much smaller place.
So if you was to sum up the private ownership experience of this aircraft, what would you say?
I suppose private aviation at this level gives you the opportunity and the ability to go where you want to go, when you want to go, in an acceptable manner.
So how are the COVID-19 restrictions working with the aircraft?
Well, not great. At the start, we had 4 months where the airport at Guernsey was completely closed. But now we're one of the few operations with a blanket exemption, so we can take people to wherever from Guernsey without isolating on our return. So we can take you pretty much anywhere. You, of course, have to follow any restrictions at the country, and of course on our return, the isolation in Guernsey. The crew have a 7-day rolling PCR test, and the aircraft is deep cleaned after every flight. Of course, when you're on the aircraft, we all have to wear a mask for the duration of the flight. While we're in the aircraft, everyone has to wear face masks, and the crew have to stay with the aircraft. But at least we're back up and running. So if you want to go and visit your family in Inverness, we can now take you there. You will have to quarantine on your return.
So how safe is this for us, John?
Well, we think at the moment it's probably the safest form of transport you can have. There are no long lines of queues at security or customs, and you know the people you're flying with. The aircraft is cleaned after every flight, and of course your crew are from Guernsey, and we get tested every 7 days. Also remember that the closer you can get to your destination, the less people you will have to rub shoulders with. As our slogan says, we're all about getting you to where you really want to go.